Welcome back, everyone, to the Wisdom of Lao Tzu.
Great to be back. Today we're tackling Chapter 27. And I want to start with the question that, well, for many of us living in our hyper-connected, often polarized world, it might feel a little uncomfortable. Think about it. Whether it's canceling someone on social media, optimizing them out of a company, or maybe just ghosting friends who no longer align with our current path, we are constantly trying to, purify our circles. We draw lines, us versus them, and we distance ourselves from the bad or ignorant people we disagree with. We kind of operate under the firm belief that a better, healthier world is built by continuously eliminating the not good. But here's the challenge Lao Tzu throws at us. What if this very impulse to purify, to exclude, is in fact the greatest form of bewilderment? What if the very people we are most eager to abandon are not liabilities, but rather necessary rungs on the ladder of our own self-realization? It sounds incredibly counterintuitive, doesn't it? As jarring, perhaps, as his famous statement from Chapter 5 that the sage is not humane, he sees the 100 families as straw dogs. Okay, let's unpack this apparent contradiction. Let's hold that provocative question for a moment, and instead, allow ourselves to drift back to a more familiar, maybe gentler image from our previous deep dives. You'll remember way back in Chapter 8, we explored Lao Tzu's highest praise for the goodness that is like water. What defined that goodness? Well, water benefits all things. It does not contend. It makes no distinctions, nourishing a giant redwood or a muddy ditch with equal impartial generosity. It flows quietly, always seeking the lowest places, eventually joining all the world's rivers. And then there was that foundational concept from Chapter 2, a master key really to understanding the entire Tao Te Ching. The idea that being and non-being produce each other, difficult and easy complete each other. It tells us that beauty and ugliness, good and not good, are not isolated enemies locked in some endless battle. They are, in fact, interdependent dance partners. Without one, the other simply cannot exist.
What's fascinating here, and I think deeply relatable for all of us, is this tension. On one hand, we instinctively admire the wisdom of water, its impartiality, its non-contention, And on a philosophical level, we can certainly grasp the interdependence of opposites. We nod along, understanding it intellectually. Yet when it comes to our actual lives, particularly in our relationships, we find this incredibly difficult to practice. We are wired, it seems, to categorize into good and bad, friends and enemies, useful talents and useless burdens. And as you highlighted, in this era of information overload and polarized stances, we are arguably even more inclined to label, to avoid, to criticize, and yes, to abandon people we dislike. We genuinely believe that a healthy environment, whether it's a social circle, a company, or even a nation, is one that is constantly being purified by eliminating these not good elements. We filter, we block, we dismiss.
It's a very human impulse, isn't it? This urge to simplify, to delineate. But in Chapter 27, Lao Tzu isn't just giving us a philosophical ideal or, a moral platitude. He's building a concrete bridge. A bridge that connects that image of goodness, like water, and the philosophy of interdependent opposites, directly to the seemingly cold, yet ultimately vast and inclusive compassion of the inhumane sage from Chapter 5. So if we follow this path, what's the journey like? How can we, like flowing water, act so perfectly that we leave no tracks, accomplishing everything without a trace of deliberate effort? And how does a sage, who has attained this way, cultivate a heart so magnanimous that it results in no one abandoned, nothing wasted? But most provocatively, what is this chapter's most subversive line, "The bad man is the material the good works on," reveal about how the very people we're tempted to avoid or dismiss might actually be the most precious resources on our own spiritual path?
This really raises an important question. What is the vital secret hidden within this chapter? It's a secret that, perhaps surprisingly, connects deep personal cultivation with effective organizational management and even a cosmic vision for coexistence. It challenges our fundamental assumptions about value and purpose.
Exactly. This isn't just abstract philosophy. It feels like a living blueprint. So let's journey together into Chapter 27 to uncover this profound wisdom of tracelessness and non-abandonment. Before we dive into what I find to be one of Lao Tzu's most practical and yet deeply spiritual teachings, this art of tracelessness, let's first quiet our minds and listen to the original text of Chapter 27. I encourage you to just let the words wash over you without immediately trying to dissect them, and notice what resonates. A good traveler leaves no tracks or traces. A good speaker is without flaw or blemish. A good reckoner does not use counters. A good closer of doors does so without bolt or lock, yet they cannot be opened. A good tier of knots does so without rope or cord, yet they cannot be untied. Thus the sage is always good at saving men, and so does not abandon anyone. He is always good at saving things, and so does not abandon anything. This is called following one's discernment. Hence the good man is the teacher the bad learns from. and the bad man is the material the good works on. Not to value the teacher, nor to love the material, though it seems clever, betrays great bewilderment. This is called the vital secret. Now that's a passage packed with vivid imagery and profound implications. Lao Tzu kicks off this chapter with 5 dazzling examples of what he calls shan, or goodness. From a traveler leaving no tracks to a knot tied without rope, it sounds almost like magic. So for an audience familiar with the Tao, what's the fundamental principle that unites these seemingly distinct skills? What is shan truly implying here beyond simple morality or even just high performance?
That's the core question. Shan in this context is far more profound than just moral goodness. It implies a state of supreme, effortless skill, a perfect alignment with the way. It's about achieving optimal outcomes, not through, say, brute force or conscious manipulation, but through a graceful, natural attunement. It's competence so complete, so integrated, that it leaves no trace of struggle or intentionality. It's not about being good in a judgmental sense, but good in an effective, perfectly attuned way that just works.
So it's less about a moral judgment of good and more about an exquisite calibration, right? A perfect attunement to reality. But if it's so effortless, so traceless, how do we even recognize it? Does the sage risk being overlooked precisely because they leave no egoic signature?
That's precisely the paradox, and it's a brilliant point. The highest skill often does go unnoticed by those looking for overt displays of power or ego. It's in the quiet, unobtrusive way problems resolve themselves or systems function harmoniously that the sage's true influence is felt. For instance, Lao Tzu's first example, a good traveler leaves no tracks or traces. This isn't literally about not leaving footprints in the dirt. It means a masterful traveler moves without leaving a clear, discernible trail of effort or struggle. Imagine that top-tier sailor again. They don't fight the wind and waves with brute force. Instead, they move in harmony with them. The boat passes, seemingly leaving no trace of struggle on the water. Their movement is so attuned to nature that it appears effortless, almost invisible, even though it's incredibly effective.
That's a beautiful image of seamless motion. It suggests a profound humility, a giving up of the ego's desire to, conquer or control. But isn't there a risk here that in trying to be traceless, one might simply become invisible or passive? How does this not just evolve into apathy?
That's a vital concern, and it highlights a common misunderstanding of Taoist non-action, or Wu Wei. Tracelessness isn't about passivity, it's about perfect efficacy without overt force. It's not about doing nothing, but doing in such alignment that the effort disappears. It takes immense discipline and skill to reach that state. Lao Tzu moves on to speaking next, and it gives us another lens into this. A good speaker is without flaw or blemish. Again, this isn't about being some aggressive debater who can never be proven wrong. Quite the contrary. It refers to a skillful speaker whose words are so perfectly attuned to the situation, so sincere and well-placed that they leave no room for criticism, misunderstanding, or attack. Their communication is clear, direct, and resonates without creating ripples of conflict. No wasted words, no unnecessary ego involved.
So it's about precision and clarity, not just volume or force. That resonates deeply. Okay, then we have the good reckoner.
Right. A good reckoner does not use counters. This speaks to a masterful calculator or strategist who doesn't need external tools like an abacus or, complex spreadsheets to figure things out. They possess an intuitive, holistic grasp of the entire situation. They see the mental landscape, the patterns, and can calculate the best path forward in their mind's eye without laborious counting. It's a different kind of intelligence, isn't it? Beyond just processing numbers, it's about seeing the whole picture and acting from an internalized understanding.
Absolutely. It's about deep wisdom, not just superficial computation. And the next 2 skills really build on this idea of internal harmony, manifesting as external strength, almost like they're speaking to communal security.
They do, and it's a crucial shift in focus. A good closer of doors does so without bolt or lock, yet they cannot be opened. This means a masterful closer secures a space, not through physical locks and keys, but through an internal harmony and cohesion that makes external force unnecessary. Imagine a community united by deep trust and common purpose. Their doors might literally be unlocked, yet they are more secure than any fortress. The true security comes from within the community, from shared values and mutual respect, not from external mechanisms of control.
That's a powerful statement about trust and community, especially relevant in our often divided world. And finally, the good tier of knots.
A good tier of knots does so without rope or cord, yet they cannot be untied. This extends the idea of internal strength to interpersonal relationships. A masterful binder creates connections without using physical ropes, contracts, or formal agreements. These are bonds between people built on sincerity, loyalty, and deep trust. These are knots of the heart, you could say, far stronger, more unbreakable than any written contract or physical restraint.
So these 5 skills, traceless travel, flawless speech, intuitive reckoning, secure closing, and unbreakable binding, all point to a state of being perfectly aligned with the way. It's about effortless effectiveness, a quiet competence. And Lao Tzu then connects this personal mastery to a much broader ethic, doesn't he? There's that crucial thus that acts as a bridge.
There is. Thus, the sage is always good at saving men, and so does not abandon anyone. He is always good at saving things, and so does not abandon anything. This is called following one's discernment. The word thus is indeed crucial here. It directly links these personal transcendent skills in the first half of the chapter with a profound social and cosmic compassion in the second. The sage's personal attainment directly translates into their way of interacting with the world.
Good at saving men and good at saving things. What does saving really mean in this context? It doesn't sound like a hero swooping in, like you said.
No, it's far more nuanced than that. The word for saving here, Shanju, is not about condescending charity, as if the sage is swooping in to rescue the helpless. It's a more masterful and profound fulfilling or enabling. The sage is skilled at enabling people and things to reach their full inherent potential. This leads directly to the radical idea of no one abandoned, nothing abandoned. In the sage's eyes, there is no person who is absolutely useless and no thing that is truly waste. The sage possesses the wisdom to see the unique value and potential hidden in every person and every object, even those that others might be quick to discard or dismiss.
That's a truly radical idea for many of us who are quick to label and discard. It challenges our fundamental filters. And what about following one's discernment? How does one acquire that? Is it just instinct?
Well, discernment here comes from a root meaning to follow and brightness. It suggests that the reason the sage can abandon nothing is that they follow their own deep inner light of wisdom. This isn't external knowledge, but an inner brightness that allows them to see the true nature of all things, to perceive their inherent value and potential, rather than judging them based on superficial appearances or conventional, often limiting, standards. It's an internal calibration to the Tao itself.
This sounds like a fundamental shift in perception, a different way of seeing the world entirely. And then Lao Tzu introduces what he calls the chapter's core and most perplexing dialectic. This is where things get truly interesting and, honestly, a bit uncomfortable.
Indeed. Hence, the good man is the teacher the bad learns from, and the bad man is the material the good works on. Here, the good man is understood as one who follows the way, a person of great skill and wisdom. He serves as a teacher for the bad man. And conversely, the bad man is the material for the good man. This word material is absolutely key to unlocking the chapter's puzzle. It can mean capital, data, or raw material, but also something to learn from, or a resource to draw upon. This ambiguity, as we'll see, has sparked centuries of debate and wildly different interpretations.
It sounds like a loaded word, and the implications could be profound depending on how you interpret it, and maybe our interpretation tells us a lot about our own worldview. And finally, after that provocative statement, Lao Tzu issues a stern warning.
He does. Not to value the teacher, nor to love the material, though it seems clever, betrays great bewilderment. This is called the vital secret. Now, this is a powerful and, frankly, almost chilling statement. Lao Tzu warns that if you don't respect your teacher, the good person, and you don't cherish your material, the bad person, then even if you think you're smart or clever, you are actually deeply confused, operating from a place of profound bewilderment. Understanding this interdependent relationship, seeing this dynamic between good and bad as a symbiotic one, is the key to grasping what Lao Tzu calls the vital secret. It's a warning against superficial judgment and short-sighted separatist thinking.
All right, now that we've absorbed the literal meaning in Lao Tzu's challenging words, it's time to put on our intellectual detective hats, maybe, and dig deeper. Lao Tzu has presented the evidence, but what profound universal principles from psychology, management, and philosophy are woven into these ancient metaphors? We'll conduct a multidimensional diagnosis through 3 progressive inquiries, starting with how exactly one achieves this effortless mastery. So let's start with our first inquiry, the art of tracelessness, drudgery or flow. We've just reviewed the 5 goods that Lao Tzu describes, that state of effortless, transcendent skill where actions are perfectly attuned, leaving no trace of struggle. How is this state achieved? Is it through endless, deliberate, grueling practice? Or is there another way, a more subtle path to mastery?
This is where ancient wisdom truly converges with modern understanding, and it offers a surprising answer. Sages throughout history have tried to crack this secret of effortless mastery. The brilliant Wei-Jin-era thinker Wang Bi, for example, said the secret lies in according with nature. He believed a master doesn't fight the world with brute force, but, like that skilled sailor we mentioned, follows the grain of the wind and waves, leaving no trace of resistance or ego. They give up imposing their will, and so they leave no discernible mark of struggle.
So it's not about forcing things, but aligning with them. It's almost a letting go. What other insights do the ancients offer about cultivating this state?
Well, He Shengong of the Han Dynasty took a more internal approach, believing it was the result of closing off desires and guarding the spirit. He argued that when a person can guard their inner core and not be disturbed by the chaotic external world, their decisions and actions naturally become simple, direct, and precise. It's about cultivating inner calm to achieve outer clarity and effectiveness, a kind of spiritual decluttering, you might say.
That sounds like a powerful way to reduce mental noise and achieve clarity. But there's an even more profound spiritual insight, isn't there, from the Zen tradition?
Yes, the Ming Dynasty Zen master Henshan Deking revealed what he considered the ultimate secret. He believed it all springs from a state of no mind, Wuxen. What is no mind? It's seeing through the illusion of the ego, the separate I. Because the I is no longer a fixed, rigid position, there is no opposition in one's actions and no manipulative intent in one's words. Like a cloud, it drifts and changes freely because it never considers any part of the sky its territory. It's pure, unconditioned action flowing without resistance.
No mind. That really brings us to the core of effortlessness. And here's where it gets truly fascinating. These ancient insights become incredibly clear when we bridge them with a modern psychological concept, flow. We talked about this briefly earlier, but it's worth diving into how precisely it mirrors Lao Tzu's vision. Expert, when we talk about this complete absorption, this seamless integration of action and awareness, are we essentially describing Csikszentmihalyi's flow state here? The parallels seem uncanny.
Absolutely. When we connect ancient Taoist wisdom with Csikszentmihalyi's groundbreaking work, it's like suddenly seeing the same mountain from two different, equally illuminating vantage points. Csikszentmihalyi had defined flow as a mental state of being completely immersed in an activity where one loses sense of self and the boundary between subject and object dissolves. It's a state of complete absorption, a profound synergy.
I think we've all had those moments, haven't we? I remember once completely losing myself while painting late into the nighttime. Just evaporated. And the brush felt like an extension of my hand, almost moving on its own. Or perhaps you felt it coding, where the logic just flows out of your fingertips and the code writes itself. Or maybe on a sports field, where you forget the score and the crowd and every move is intuitive and perfect. Is that the kind of complete absorption Csikszentmihalyi was pinpointing?
Precisely. Your painting example beautifully illustrates how the self momentarily disappears, how you become one with the activity. And that sense of effortless mastery where your whole being is involved, using your skills to the utmost, that is flow. It's not about trying harder, it's about being in the right state of mind, so perfectly attuned that the effort, the tracks, simply vanish.
So if we take this psychological profile of flow, this feeling of effortless yet potent engagement, how does it unlock Lao Tzu's 5 mysterious doors of mastery?
Let's apply it directly. Take, a good traveler leaves no tracks. This isn't about literally not leaving footprints. It's about the traveler entering a state of action flow, merging with their environment. They aren't overcoming the terrain, they are responding to it. A world-class sailor isn't fighting the wind, he's riding it, becoming one with it. His path is the fastest and most elegant, leaving no trace of struggle. This is the merging of self with the action, a kind of elegant surrender that yields supreme effectiveness.
That's the visual of seamless, almost invisible motion. What about speaking, which often feels anything but effortless for many of us?
A good speaker is without flaw. This isn't about being a cunning debater, quite the opposite. It's communication flow. In this state, the speaker is free from the interference of self-consciousness and calculation. They aren't thinking, how can I say this to my best advantage? They're expressing themselves sincerely and naturally from a place of deep authenticity. Their words flow out, and so they are clear, unblemishable, and resonate authentically because they aren't weighted down by ego or agenda.
And the reckoner who doesn't use counters. That sounds like pure distilled intuition and almost mystical ability to see the whole picture.
Precisely. A good reckoner does not use counters, is decision flow. When a person has so thoroughly grasped the core principles of a situation, they no longer need to rely on cumbersome external tools and data analysis alone. An experienced sea captain, for instance, can glance at the sky and the currents and calculate the best course in his mind, often with greater accuracy than someone meticulously charting every variable. This is a form of flow based on deep intuition and accumulated experience, where decisions become spontaneous and accurate, almost an unconscious knowing.
And the last two, the closer of doors and the tier of knots, really emphasize this idea of internal harmony, creating external strength, hinting at relationships and community.
Exactly. A good closer without a lock and a good tier without a rope point to the highest level of interpersonal flow. The most secure closures and bonds don't rely on external bolts, rules, contracts, or ropes. They are built, as Master Hanshin said, with a sincere and unguarded no mind. When a team shares a common goal and deep trust, they don't need KPIs to bind them. Their shared purpose is the strongest glue. When two people share a true connection, they don't need vows to constrain them. Their mutual respect and understanding is the unbreakable tie. This bond, born of inner alignment, is the strongest and most unbreakable because it comes from a place of genuine connection and trust, not external force.
So to return to our original question, is the art of tracelessness the inevitable result of grueling practice?
Not entirely. Practice is indeed the foundation, but it leads not to more effortful doing, but to a higher quality of being. Through the modern concept of flow, Lao Tzu's wisdom delivers a stunning rebuke to our efficiency-obsessed era. The most effective state is precisely the one that is most effortless, most enjoyable, and paradoxically most non-active in terms of conscious struggle. True excellence is not the tensing of muscles, but the relaxation of the spirit. Not the forcing of will, but the union with the way. It invites us in our daily practice to seek those moments where the self can temporarily recede, to move from deliberate to unintentional, and to truly sublimate from hard practice into a joyful, effortless dance.
That's a powerful invitation, transforming drudgery into grace. We've just explored how peak personal skill comes from this state of flow, where the self and the world merge. This seems to be a secret about how an individual can achieve mastery. But here's where it gets really interesting. Lao Tzu's blueprint for wisdom extends far beyond an individual perfecting themselves in isolation. Once a master has achieved this traceless art, how do they view the world? What does their relationship with others and with all things look like? Lao Tzu immediately pulls our perspective from the inner landscape of personal cultivation to the panoramic view that embraces all of existence. This brings us to our second profound inquiry, the ethic of non-abandonment, compassion, or a higher form of management. Lao Tzu pivots from the personal state of flow directly to what appears to be cosmic compassion. Always good at saving men, and so does not abandon anyone. Always good at saving things, and so does not abandon anything. Expert, when you hear that, is it merely a moral appeal for universal kindness, or is it hiding an incredibly advanced, even strategic management philosophy?
It's fascinating to consider because on the surface you might picture a compassionate elder dedicated to saving all sentient beings from suffering. And that's certainly part of the resonance. But to call it merely a moral appeal would be to miss a much deeper, more sophisticated wisdom. The contemporary scholar Chen Guang offers a crucial insight here. He points out that the sage's saving is not simple charity, but rather the act of helping every person fulfill their talent and everything fulfill their use. This sage sees beyond the world's dualistic labels of useful versus useless. They perceive that every person and everything contains a unique, undiscovered value waiting to be realized.
That immediately resonates with some of the most cutting-edge ideas in modern management, doesn't it? I'm thinking specifically of strengths-based leadership. This theory, pioneered by Donald O. Clifton and popularized by Gallup, poses a revolutionary question. What would happen if we studied what is right with people versus what is wrong with people? It's a complete flip from traditional management.
Absolutely. Traditional management logic is often all about fixing weaknesses. It obsesses over how to repair an employee's flaws, pouring resources into remediation. But strengths theory argues, persuasively, that the return on investment for turning a negative into a neutral is minimal. A person's greatest potential for growth lies not in shoring up deficiencies, but in polishing their innate talents into brilliant, shining strengths. A strengths-based organization doesn't try to fix its employees. It helps them identify, develop, and apply what they do best. And the data proving this approach is stunning. When managers focus on employees' strengths, engagement soars, and teams that receive strengths-based development see significantly higher sales, profits, and retention rates than their peers.
So if we apply this brand new perspective and travel back 2.5 millennia to meet Lao Tzu's sage, Isn't the sage who abandons no one the ultimate master of strengths theory? A brilliant discoverer of hidden talents in individuals and hidden uses in objects.
He truly is. But his method of discovery is perhaps even more profound than just identifying individual strengths. Wang Bai's interpretation gives us a more radical view of why we have useless people in society. He argues that the reason society has useless people in the first place is that we have created too many rigid standards and singular goals. We build narrow boxes and then wonder why some people don't fit. The sage's saving, then, is not an active, prescriptive intervention, but a non-action of dismantling these artificial boxes. He doesn't use one ruler to measure everyone. In this infinitely spacious environment, every person can find their own ecological niche. A quiet, introverted person is no longer labeled bad at networking. Their powerful focus and deep thinking abilities naturally come to the forefront and are valued. A seemingly impulsive person is no longer criticized for being reckless. Their decisive, action-oriented energy finds a productive outlet.
So it's about creating an environment where people can naturally thrive by being their authentic selves, rather than forcing them into predetermined roles. That's a truly revolutionary leadership philosophy.
Exactly. The sage sees the original brightness within each person. His job, as Master Hanshin said, is simply to follow what is already there, like the master butcher from the Zhuangzi, who moves his knife along the natural lines of the anatomy, skillfully navigating the gaps to help remove the blockages and allow each person's own light to shine. It's about enabling, not imposing, about liberation, not control.
And what about how this profound wisdom is transmitted or shared? Lao Tzu calls it following one's discernment. It sounds like an internal compass.
There's a beautiful and tender interpretation here. One scholar noted that in older manuscripts, the word for following can also mean to pull or to tow. He suggests that this wisdom isn't a bright light shining down from on high, judging. Instead, it's like a soft rope, gently lowered into the darkness, refusing to leave anyone behind, tenderly pulling each person one by one out of their confusion and despair into a space where their true potential can emerge.
Isn't that the warmest possible picture of abandoning no one? It's not about judgment. It's about connection and upliftment, a quiet, persistent act of grace.
It absolutely is. However, we must acknowledge that not everyone applauds Lao Tzu's wisdom in this interpretation. The formidable late Ming thinker Wang Fuzi offered the sharpest critique, arguing that this isn't compassion at all. It's a cold and ruthless form of utilization. He saw Lao Tzu as teaching rulers to treat everyone's flaws and misfortunes as mere stepping stones and tools for their own grand projects. He called it a sophisticated form of Machiavellianism, seeing it as fundamentally instrumental and self-serving.
This is a powerful critique. It's a very different, almost cynical lens to view Lao Tzu's words through. So, expert, how do we reconcile this? Is Lao Tzu's non-abandonment truly compassion or cunning or just simply a very good, very wise management strategy? Where do you land?
I believe the answer lies in the altitude of one's perspective, or perhaps the depth of one's understanding of the Tao. Professor Fu Perong reminds us that the sage can abandon no one because he sees from the perspective of the Tao, affirming the reason for being of every single person and thing. From the viewpoint of the Tao, all things are ultimately one. There is no center and no periphery, no high and no low, and thus the distinction between useful and useless naturally dissolves into a unified whole. When you truly see the world from this cosmic, interconnected perspective of the Tao, there truly is no waste.
That truly clarifies it. The labels of useful and useless are indeed human constructs, not inherent qualities from the Tao's boundless perspective. And this wisdom applies equally to things, doesn't it? The idea of abandoning no thing is something we can see manifest in a very practical way.
Absolutely. Isn't the idea of abandoning no thing the ancient origin of today's aesthetics of upcycling or creative reuse? It teaches us to look at what we consider waste with an eye for discovery. Discarded wood shavings, which seem useless, can be spread on a muddy path to prevent slipping. Seemingly useless scraps of fabric can become a magnificent work of art in the hands of a creative person. This very act of looking for inherent potential in discarded things can bring immense psychological benefits. It cultivates mindfulness, boosts creativity, and transforms us from passive consumers into active creators.
So let's return to our original question for this section. Lao Tzu's ethic of non-abandonment is far from an empty slogan. It's not an either choice between simple compassion or cynical management strategy.
No, it's a profound systemic wisdom. Whether you're managing people or utilizing things, the most effective and sustainable approach is not to judge, filter, and eliminate, but to discover, accord with, and complete. This is perhaps the true meaning of following one's discernment, that clear inherited wisdom that teaches us to shift from a logic of evaluation to a logic of appreciation and fulfillment. In the end, we discover that in this world, there are no people who need to be abandoned and no things that are truly useless. So, non abandonment is not a top down pity, but a top tier wisdom of discovering and fulfilling value. It teaches us to see beyond the narrow labels of useful and useless to the reason for being, the inherent potential in every person and everything.
This is already a very high state of attainment, perceiving inherent value and potential in all things, and acting to fulfill it. But Lao Tzu seems to feel that this still doesn't touch the true core. He immediately throws out a pair of seemingly contradictory, even somewhat cold concepts, teacher and material, followed by an even more perplexing admonition. Not to value the teacher, nor to love the material. What on earth is he talking about? If the good are teachers and the bad are resources, why shouldn't we value and love them? Is there a cosmic law hidden here, an ultimate secret, even more profound than every person has their talent, everything has its use? This is the third secret we must now explore, the so-called vital secret. We now arrive at the deepest and most easily misunderstood core of the chapter, not to value the teacher, nor to love the material. If the good person is the teacher and the bad person is the material, why on earth are we told not to value and love them? What profound, perhaps even unsettling mystery is hidden here?
This is truly the crux of Chapter 27, and it has sharply divided thinkers throughout history. The key, as we noted earlier, lies in how we understand that single word, material. Different interpretations of this word are like putting on different colored glasses, revealing entirely different worldviews and sparking centuries of debate. Let's delve into this profound intellectual wrestling match.
So we have two sharply opposed perspectives on this, almost like two sides of a philosophical coin, each with very different implications for how we live and lead. Who are the main players here?
First up, we have the great late Ming thinker Wang Fuzi. His critique is like a sharp scalpel, incisive, and frankly quite chilling. He bluntly called Lao Tzu's statement a ruthless saying. In his view, material is cold, hard capital, a mere stepping stone. He argued that Lao Tzu is not talking about moral cultivation at all, but teaching a highly sophisticated political tactic. A so-called good person or ruler should be adept at using the flaws, failures, and badness of others as resources and capital on their own road to success. This is a naked, instrumental relationship that views others as tools for one's own advancement, a cold and heartless Machiavellianism. Wang Fuzi believed that Lao Tzu's seemingly all-embracing wisdom actually turns everyone into a pawn for achieving one's own goals, making it profoundly selfish at its core.
This is a stunning critique. It's like a bolt of lightning that splits open the warm, gentle interpretations we've been building, forcing us to confront the cold and cruel potential hidden within this phrase. It suggests a very cynical view of human interaction, a world of calculation.
Indeed. It assumes a world composed of separate, competing individuals where every interaction is a zero-sum game. But on the other side, we have the contemporary scholar Chen Guiying. His interpretation is full of humanistic care, warm and wise. He believes material should be understood as a mirror, something to reflect upon and learn from. The failures, mistakes, and limitations of the bad person serve as the best warning signs in textbooks for the good person. It reminds the good person to look inward, to see the potential for badness within themselves, and thus avoid repeating the same errors.
It's a beautiful reframing. So for Chen Guiying, this is not exploitation, but rather a reciprocal relationship.
Exactly. Chen Guiying sees it as a reciprocal educational relationship of mutual learning and growth. As the writer Yu Qiu puts it colloquially, the good person is the bad person's teacher. The bad person is the good person's lesson. It's about personal growth for both, not just one benefiting from the other. Wang Fuzi's view of a cold stepping stone stands in stark contrast to Chen Guiying's warm, reflecting mirror. This debate reflects fundamentally different assumptions about the nature of the world, whether it's separate, competing individuals or an interdependent whole.
So the bewilderment then, in Lao Tzu's view, would be to adopt Wang Fuzi's separatist worldview. But is material simply a passive lesson? Let's shift perspectives again and look at it from the viewpoint of a top-tier manager or a sage king, someone who actively engages with the world.
That's a crucial shift. The Han Dynasty commentator He Shanggong, whose interpretation is full of practical wisdom, believed material simply means use. From this perspective, a bad person isn't a burden on society, but a resource that can be taught, transformed, and thus put to good use by society. The sage's job is not to despise and exclude them, but to actively educate them, to integrate them, so that they can be of use to society. effectively turning what might be seen as a weakness into a strength or a valuable contribution.
That sounds like a powerful way to look at it, a true form of non-abandonment where every element, every individual is seen for their potential contribution. Do we have any Western examples that resonate with this idea of turning perceived flaws or unconventional traits into assets within a group?
A great Western example that comes to mind can be found in the classic story of the A-Team. This group of former Special Forces soldiers, framed for a crime they didn't commit, were essentially outcasts from mainstream society, seen as bad or problematic. Each member had what, by conventional standards, might be considered a significant flaw. Hannibal was a master of disguise, but a compulsive risk-taker, always pushing the limits. Face was a smooth-talking con man, adept at bending rules. Murdoch was a brilliant pilot, but clinically insane, often unreliable in conventional settings. And B.A. Baracus was a mechanical genius, but prone to a terrible temper and fear of flying. By societal norms, they were a collection of bad people or misfits, constantly on the run.
Yes, the classic A-Team. They were always breaking the rules, always unconventional, but somehow always for the greater good, weren't they?
Exactly. However, within their unique team, these flaws became their greatest assets. Their unconventional methods, which society deemed bad, were precisely what allowed them to help innocent people and evade the authorities. A wise leader, like Hannibal, didn't try to fix his team members or make them conform. He knew how to deploy their unique bad traits in situations where they became invaluable strengths. Face's cunning to get resources, Murdoch's madness to distract or innovate, BA's temper as raw power, and Hannibal's risk-taking for bold plans. This embodies the art of not demanding perfection from any one person, but finding the perfect role for their unique material. From this perspective, material is not just a passive mirror for reflection, but an active, transformable resource that can be cultivated and fulfilled.
Okay, but if we thought the debate ended there, between stepping stone, mirror, and resource, we would be underestimating the profound wisdom of the ancients. The Song Dynasty scholar Ch., with his unique blend of Confucian warmth and Zen insight, offered an interpretation that kind of transcends all of these.
He took the phrase, "not to value the teacher, nor to love the material, though it seems clever, betrays great bewilderment," and completely flipped the common understanding. The common explanation is, if you don't respect the teacher, the good person, and don't cherish the material, the bad person, then even if you think you're smart, you're actually a great fool. But Tzu says, wrong. He argues that not valuing the teacher, not loving the material, is itself the highest ideal state.
That's a huge leap. How can that be the highest ideal, to not value or love? It feels so counterintuitive to everything we've been discussing about non-abandonment and appreciation.
He explains it this way. The sage has no intention to teach, so he does not need to make a show of loving his material. The world has no intention to learn, so it does not need to make a show of valuing its teacher. What does this mean? A true sage teaches the world not with conscious effort or utilitarian motive, I am going to teach you, but as a natural outflow of their very being. Therefore, they don't need to consciously cherish the bad people as their teaching material because it's simply part of the fabric of existence. And in turn, the people of the world are transformed by this sage without even realizing it, like grass growing in a spring rain. They don't need to consciously respect a specific teacher because the teaching is so natural, so pervasive, that it becomes indistinguishable from the environment itself.
This is the highest state of accomplishing the work without taking credit, isn't it? A perfect state of mutual forgetting, where the act of teaching and learning becomes so seamless it's no longer even perceived as separate actions. The giver and receiver have merged.
Precisely. The later Zen master Hanjin Deking took this to its ultimate conclusion, seeing it as the complete forgetting of the concept of self and the concept of other. Only now do we realize that all the previous discussions, whether about stepping stones, reflecting mirrors, or active resources, were still operating on the level of intentional action and a distinction between parties. Tzu and Hanshan have brought us into a higher dimensional spiritual world of unintentional action, where dualities dissolve.
So after this long journey through conflicting interpretations, from the stark Machiavellianism of Wang Fuzi to the humanistic mirror, the pragmatic resource, and finally to this transcendent state of mutual forgetting, what expert is Lao Tzu's true vital secret? What's the ultimate aha moment here?
The vital secret, then, isn't about what to do with good or bad people, but a profound realization. The very categories themselves are a construct of a limited perspective. Lao Tzu tells us good and bad are not isolated enemies, but inseparable co-creating forces within a single, dynamic system. It's an invitation to perceive the world not as a collection of separate parts, but as an interconnected, living whole, as Zhuangzi eloquently put it. From the perspective of the Tao, things have no inherent rank. Without black, you cannot define white. Without the not good, there is no way for goodness to manifest and be understood. A teacher is a teacher only because students exist. A skill is a skill only because clumsiness exists as a reference point. The bad person is not a resource for the good person's ego. They are a necessary, integral component of the entire system of the Tao that allows goodness to become manifest and meaningful.
Once this is understood, the dualistic opposition of user and used, helper and helped, judge and judged dissolves. It's replaced by a profound, systemic, holistic wisdom. And this also provides the clearest interpretation of the final warning. Though it seems clever, betrays great bewilderment.
Exactly. What is this bewilderment that Lao Tzu speaks of? It describes those who think they are clever but see the world through a lens of separation and opposition. Think of Wang Fuzi again. His critique was sharp, undoubtedly, but the world he saw was one of hostility and calculation, a constant struggle between separate, competing entities. That in itself is the great bewilderment, the inability to see the underlying interconnectedness and interdependence of all things. The real great wisdom is often as if foolish, appearing humble and unpretentious because it recognizes its own limitations and, crucially, sees an interdependent whole where others see only fragments and opposition. So Lao Tzu's final vital secret is not just teaching us how to view good and bad, but reminding us to always maintain a sense of humility and awe for the profound complexity and completeness of this interconnected world.
From stepping stones to reflecting mirrors, from active resources to a holistic view of mutual forgetting, we have delved deeper and deeper to touch the core of Lao Tzu's vital secret, a systemic wisdom that transcends the dualities of good and evil, self and other, useful and useless, and returns to the oneness of all things. However, such a profound philosophy, if it remains only in the clouds of speculation, will ultimately seem distant and pale. True wisdom must be able to permeate every corner of life, like salt dissolving in water, leaving its unique imprint on the real world. So what does this holistic view of abandoning nothing, with all things being interdependent, actually look like in history and in our lives today? Let's search for the living footprints of the Tao on Earth, in the yellowed pages of history books and the case studies of modern businesses. Let's travel back to the tumultuous age of sail, to a time of wooden ships and iron men, and meet a sea captain who truly understood the wisdom of abandoning no thing. This particular captain, let's call him Captain Elias, was known for a peculiar habit that his crew found baffling, even annoying. While overseeing the endless repairs and maintenance of his mighty warship, he gave a strange, almost obsessive order. Every single offcut of wood from the shipwrights, every short piece of discarded rope from the riggers, and every scrap of torn canvas from the sailmakers was to be collected and meticulously stored in a special hold tucked away deep below deck. They were not, under any circumstances, to be thrown overboard. The sailors grumbled constantly. "Why is the captain hoarding this junk?" they muttered. "That hold is prime storage space, and it's being filled with what everyone else considers worthless garbage."
This is a fantastic illustrative example of the upcycling gaze, as we'll call it. Years passed, the junk hold grew. Then, one day, deep in the treacherous waters of the North Atlantic, a ferocious, unforecasted storm descended upon the ship. It wasn't just a squall, it was a tempest. A massive rogue wave crashed over the deck, tearing through the rigging and snapping the mighty mainmast in half like a twig. The ship was crippled, at the mercy of the raging sea, hundreds of miles from the nearest port. The situation was dire. The ship's carpenter, his face grim, reported that they simply didn't have enough long, sturdy timbers on board to splint the mast and allow them to make it back to safety. Despair began to set in amongst the crew.
As panic started to ripple through the ship, Captain Elias, despite the chaos around him, remained remarkably calm. He surveyed the damage, then turned to his first mate with a quiet order. "Open the junk hold." Inside, to the crew's astonishment, was years' worth of carefully saved waste. Under his calm, expert direction, the crew took the short, discarded pieces of rope and, using complex, ancient knots, painstakingly wove them into thick, incredibly strong cables. They took the endless wood scraps and, layering them together with pitch and tar, fashioned a massive laminated splint strong enough to brace the broken mast. They used the old canvas scraps to waterproof the entire makeshift structure.
Against all odds and with ingenuity born of necessity, they managed a makeshift but incredibly strong repair. They jury-rigged a new mast, able to bear a small sail, and were able to limp back to port, saving the ship and all hands aboard. The sailors who had once mocked his hoarding now looked at Captain Elias with profound awe and respect. They finally understood. The captain's eyes saw no waste. He possessed what we might call an upcycling gaze. He wasn't seeing the present uselessness of the scraps, but their future potential. This is the highest state of always being good at saving things and so abandoning nothing, a foresight that transcends immediate appearances, and a wisdom that perceives use and value in everything.
Now, let's fast forward to the modern era and step into a bustling corporate environment. Imagine the global consulting giant Accenture, a company famous for its deep integration of strengths-based development principles, which we just discussed. Within this company, a project team has just suffered a painful and very public failure. A new app they developed met with a lukewarm market response, and all the invested resources, time, money, talent, were essentially wasted. Team morale is at an all-time low, and inevitably, members have started the blame game. A traditional manager, accustomed to the old paradigm of fixing weaknesses, might react like this. He'd call a post-mortem meeting to meticulously point out everyone's problems. He'd tell the quiet programmer, "Your communication skills are poor," which led to a misunderstanding of the requirements. He'd tell the marketing specialist with a head full of ideas, "Your thinking lacks system and your execution is weak." His conclusion would likely be, "This team is incompetent, it should be disbanded, and the project should be abandoned." This, my friends, is a textbook case of abandoning people and abandoning things.
But how would a sage-like leader, one who truly understands the wisdom of abandoning no one, act in this scenario? She would immediately apply the lens of strengths-based leadership. She knows that true power comes not from patching up weaknesses, but from identifying and amplifying each person's unique talents. Instead of a group indictment, she would have sincere one-on-one conversations with her team members. To the quiet programmer, she'd say, "I've noticed you have an incredible talent for deliberative thought. You can see risks and details that everyone else misses, which is invaluable for identifying potential pitfalls." To the marketing specialist, she'd say, "You have an extremely powerful ideation talent. You are an engine of new ideas for this team, and we need that spark." She doesn't see a failed team. She sees a team whose powerful individual strengths were simply improperly configured or aligned with the initial project. She doesn't abandon the people. She rediscovers and reaffirms each person's intrinsic value.
So she essentially gives them that upcycling gaze that Captain Elias had for his scraps. It's the same principle, really.
Exactly. Next, she begins to practice abandoning no thing with the failed project itself. She tells the team, "This failed app is not garbage. It is our most precious material, our data for learning. It's a gift." She leads the team to dive deep into the user data, the customer feedback, the market gaps that were missed. A remarkable thing happens. The programmer, with the deliberative talent, instead of being shamed for poor communication, is now empowered to discover a previously overlooked, highly specific niche user group within the sea of data. The marketing specialist with the ideation talent, energized by this new focus and feeling affirmed, comes up with a brand new, much more precise product concept tailored exactly to this niche. The team members, feeling seen, valued, and affirmed in their strengths, regain their motivation, their trust in each other, and their collective purpose.
And the outcome. They upcycle the wreckage of the failed project into a new, highly successful product. This leader, like the resourceful sea captain, turned what others saw as irredeemable waste into a winning formula. She abandoned no one, and she wasted no failure. This, my friends, is the living practice of being good at saving in modern management. It's not just a moral ideal, but a deeply effective, sustainable, and empowering way to lead. Having diagnosed the condition of our modern tendency to purify, and having witnessed these powerful case studies where the wisdom of non-abandonment truly transforms outcomes, the most important step now is to return to ourselves and find a remedy we can personally apply. This week, we're going to invite you to try a simple yet profound mental exercise, one that encapsulates the sage's perspective. We're calling it the upcycling gaze.
The core wisdom of this chapter, remember, is abandoning no one and abandoning no thing. This exercise is designed to actively train your brain to switch from a default mode of judging and discarding to one of discovering potential and recreating. It's about consciously shifting your perspective, your lens through which you view the world.
This practice has two simple, actionable parts. First, you're going to upcycle a person. This week, bring to mind someone in your life who is currently causing you frustration, disappointment, or perhaps even an impulse to distance yourself. It could be a colleague, a family member, a friend, or honestly, even a difficult aspect of yourself. Your default perspective likely focuses on their flaws and shortcomings, those things that make them not good in your eyes. Your task is this. Within the week, consciously look for and acknowledge just one hidden strength or non-obvious talent in that person. Don't try to fix their flaws. Don't even try to change them. Simply see and acknowledge that positive trait, that glimmer of inherent value. As Donald O. Clifton, the father of strengths-based psychology, so eloquently put it, there is no more effective way to empower people than to see each person in terms of his or her strengths. Observe what happens to your feelings about this person, and even yourself, when you consciously change your gaze.
And for the second part, you'll upcycle a thing. Next, find an object in your home that you are about to throw away or discard. It could be something as simple as an old t-shirt, a glass jar from your kitchen, a piece of scrap paper, or even a shipping box that just arrived. Before you toss it in the recycling or trash bin, pause for just 1 minute. Look at it, really look, and ask yourself one question. What is its hidden potential? Can this jar become a pencil holder? Can this t-shirt become a cleaning rag, or maybe even a reusable shopping bag with a few cuts? You don't actually have to embark on a big craft project. The point of the exercise is the act of seeing itself, the shift in perspective from waste to potential. This small, intentional practice allows you to experience the psychological benefits of creative reuse. It cultivates mindfulness, boosts your sense of accomplishment, and powerfully reminds you that value can always be created, not just consumed.
This upcycling gaze exercise, in its beautiful simplicity, condenses the profound wisdom of the sage into a psychological switch you can flip at any time. It trains us to see the world, both people and things, with a more compassionate, a more resourceful, and ultimately a more creative eye. Give it a try this week and observe the subtle but powerful shifts it brings to your perception. Friends, Chapter 27 of the Tao Te Ching reveals a truly profound truth about life and mastery. True goodness leaves no trace of showing off. True wisdom quietly works, not to eliminate, but to discover and bring out the best in others and in all things.
Lao Tzu tells us that the sage is great not because he possesses some superhuman ability to save everyone, but precisely because he refuses to give up on anyone, including those who seem not good, including those we label bad or useless. The wisdom is in the refusal to abandon.
And this is the lamp that Lao Tzu lights for us, shining directly on that often uncomfortable truth. Hence, the good man is the teacher the bad learns from, and the bad man is the material the good works on. It's an invitation to see the interdependence, the inherent unity in all things.
However, just as we are basking in the warmth and profound practicality of this philosophy of mutual accomplishment and non-abandonment, in our next deep dive, Lao Tzu, in his characteristic way, leads us into a maze of paradox and contradiction. He challenges our very understanding of strength and influence.
Indeed, he suddenly tells us, to become a channel for the world, you must know the masculine but keep to the feminine. Though you know what strength is, you must deliberately choose a yielding, receptive posture. To become a valley for the world, you must know the white but keep to the black. It's another layer entirely. We encourage you to consider the implications of this new paradox. How can one be strong by embracing the feminine, or brilliant by embracing darkness? And join us for the next deep dive into Lao Tzu's endlessly surprising wisdom. Until then, keep an upcycling gaze on the world around you.